while you were talking, I had to sit down, so I was thinking, and I was listening to you, and I closed my eyes, and you said, we don't have enemies, but my enemies are in here. I was like, you're talking about us? Oh, right, yeah. What's coming out of here? Yeah, right. And context is important. So I didn't have my eyes open for that, so I was like, man, that's how you really feel, Paul. All right. Last 2 weeks, we've been talking about kind of the same passage, Romans 1:18. And I started with this, and Aaron was kind of talking about it, dabbling with it as well. We've been talking about this idea of worldview. And there's so much to talk about. I mean, we've been talking about worldview for 20 years now, almost, I feel like. And I've been studying for that long as well. And so as I was looking at this verse, I wanted to continue with Romans 1. You go to the slide there. Yeah. Righteous shall live by faith. And we've been talking about this idea of faith. We've talked about even on, all this other stuff. But one of the words that I wanted to focus on today as I was looking at this is this idea of righteousness. Because, first of all, let's go back. What was faith? How do we define faith the last 2 weeks? Action. What else? You're about to say something. How I live, right? This is the actions that I take, the steps that I take, how I live my life. This is faith. It's not necessarily from the Greek perspective of what I think, I believe. I agree with you, so we have faith. It's how I live my life, the steps that I take every day. But as we look at this, righteousness is the Hebrew word tzedek, right? What is righteous? What does it mean to be righteous?
To do good.
To do good, right? Somebody who's just, somebody who does good stuff, right? Somebody who is always doing what's right. And I found it interesting, like the righteous shall live by emunah. The tzedek who does what is right lives by the right actions of living, right? It's kind of like this wordplay almost that Paul is, or not even Paul is quoting. Well, he's quoting somebody from Habakkuk. And so here's this idea of the righteous. And so it's like this wordplay going on, and I was thinking about this as I was back there. I remember years ago we had a word for somebody who, in high school, who proclaimed like they were a great basketball player. And then you get them out on the court, you're like, right? We had a term for that. Bruce, I don't remember if you remember that phrase. What do you call it today when somebody's like that? Overrated? All right, that's a good one. What else do you guys? What's the language you use today? Overrated? What else? It's got to be a clever term to use. All talk, all right? You have a phrase. Overrated is a tough phrase, I think. You remember what we call those people? Now you're lying. Sinner! Poser! There it was, right there. Yeah, there you go. Here's close to the next generation right there, too. Alright, I can call you a poser. Do you guys still use that term? Yeah. So somebody who proclaimed to be something, but in all reality they were not. They were posers. Right? Which is the opposite of what Paul is saying here. The righteous, the person who does what is right, lives by his right actions. Right? He's not somebody that proclaims, I'm a Christian, I'm a follower of God. And then you turn the corner and he's like, what are you doing? Right? You can tell who this person is, not because he proclaims to be this person, because you look at his actions and you're like, this is a person of God, this is a woman of God right here. Right? By the way she speaks, the way that she cares about people, treats people, loves people, serves people, bends over back. You can tell that there's something different about this person. And it's not that they're just nice. The righteous person lives by faith. They're not a poser. Paul even takes a step further and he goes into Romans 14. I don't think I have the verse here. Who's got their phone open? Bruce, read Romans 14, 23, 40, please. Oh, perfect. I know, we're so 20th century. I mean, come on. Definitely, we're Bruce. 14. Whoever's got there first. Go ahead.
I am obligated both to Greeks and non-Greeks, both to the wise and the foolish. Romans 1:14.
No, 14:23. Sorry.
Oh, my bad.
Loser!
But whoever has doubts is condemned if they eat. Am I right? Yeah, okay. But whoever has doubts is condemned if they eat, because their eating is not from faith, and everything that does not come from faith is sin.
Interesting. Everything that does not come from faith is sin. And how do we define faith? How I live my life. So if you don't live your life according to what God says, hey, this is what's right. This is what's just. This is faith. Live these words out. If you don't live these words out, then you're what? You're sinning, right? And not in the idea like sinning, well, I don't believe in God. I don't believe in these things. If I don't show empathy, if I don't show compassion when a child needs help, also that's wrong. It's sin in his mind. I will define sin in a few weeks. Because sin, unlike, well, Catholics do learn it, right? Religion class, you love it, right? Did you see that? He's like, no. Oh wait, yes, I do. It's okay. If Justice been here, you're like, nope, sure don't. Right? Do you remember in your religion class how they define sin? No? You're a good Catholic student back there. How do they define sin?
Discretion against God.
Discretion? What define discretion?
Like an act against God. Against the commands of God.
Interesting. Okay. And then what happens when you sin? Then you start getting black spots on your heart, right? Because there's mortal sins, right? And one of those mortal sins for a long time was if you didn't go to Mass, what would happen? You go to hell, right? Just by not going to Mass.
You might have heard.
Maybe.
You got to climb up the point.
Oh, wow. So does that have to do with the faith? No, we're not going to do it. All right. No, let's not go there. All right, so sin. So there's this idea of like, if I don't agree with this, or if I don't do this, if I don't show up at Mass, right, I go to hell. Because that's sin. Whereas opposed to Paul's view, sin is the Hebrew word for sin is batah, right? Which means what? Miss the mark. How many of us miss the mark? Well, you said it. How many of us miss the mark every day? You just said it. 10 out of 10, right? And hopefully it's not 10 out of 10. I believe that you can do better than that. But we do.
The girls in archery class yesterday.
Nice. How many times did you hit the bullseye? Who did 2? 3 times?
You quit after the first one.
How many times did you hit it? Once. Was it hard? Is it hard to hit the bullseye? How far away were you? Now you got all shy. Come on. You can open up. How far away were you? 10 feet? Alright? Now imagine if you were 100 feet. Do you think you could hit the bullseye then? It's difficult, right? The further the target gets away from you. And that's kind of like life, isn't it? Right? As we grow up, it's kind of easy to hit the target, but as we get older, these decisions we have to make, decisions you had to make when you were 7 are not like what you have to make when you're 16 or 17 years old, right? It's difficult, right? Relationships, friendships, classes, what am I going to do? Like, is it okay to do this? Should I, my friends that have weed, they think it's okay. Should I partake in that, right? I want to go get drunk at a party, is that okay? Like, what do I do? Like, there's all these confusing things. And then as you get to like Walt's age, right? That's like, things are really difficult.
You're not going to worry.
So the biblical worldview is this idea, this paradigm that affects every aspect of your life. There's a quote from one of the books that we read in class years ago, a guy named Bailey. Jesus through Middle Eastern eyes. And if you want to understand paradigms, and you want to understand the Christmas story, this book is a really good book because he goes into detail. All the things that you think about Christmas that aren't actual. Like the manger, like the wise men, like the inn that was full, like we think of like the Hyatt, it's closed, sorry, you know? But he goes into great detail, so if you're interested in this, but he said this one sentence that I want to read. He said, in every culture, the message of the gospel is in constant danger of being compromised by the value system that supports that culture and its goals. How often do we read the Bible and take our 21st century context and put it into the text and think, well, this is what this means? Not realizing that our 21st century New Orleans culture might be a little bit different than the 1st century or the 5th century BCE Israel, Egypt culture. They're slightly different. And a lot of times, we don't even recognize that we're doing it. We just read something and we just make assumptions. And the problem is if we don't understand that culture, and sometimes we don't even understand our own culture, we miss what's actually being said in the text. I'll give you an example. Judges 9:35. See if you have it there. Judges 9:35. Next one. Here we go. Agal, the son of Ebed, went out and stood in the entering of the gate of the city. The city gate. Now we watch movies, you think of city gate. If you think of a city gate, what comes to mind? Really? What do you picture in your mind? City gate.
Something that's either keeping you in or keeping somebody.
What does it look like?
Could be a lot.
Okay. Like an arch, okay? Or what about like an arch with a drawbridge? I can see a lot of those movies. What do you think about when you think of the city gate?
Big wooden door. Couple towers, doors.
Yeah, right? When we think of these towers and guards, this big open wood door, or this gate that comes dropping down, like that's the image that instantly pops in our head when we think of city gate. Unfortunately, that's not what a city gate is in the culture of the people of the Bible. When I went to Israel, I walked up to, and this light's on, you can't see it too well. Can you hit that light, please, right down? When I went to Israel, in Tel Dan, I walked into this place that was being excavated and dug out. And so this is the city gate right here. You can see this. This is part of the city gate. And there was these steps I had to go up. And so the city gate, this is the city back here. The city gate is all of this right here. It's a complex. And so as you see these stairs right here, what you see when you walk up into the city gate, you go up like a few feet, and then you basically have to turn right into the city gate, and then you go left to another part. It's like these 90-degree turns that you keep going into. And then you enter into a big room, and then you enter into a courtyard, and then there's another room that you enter. So there's all these interlocking places. And like, this is the city gate. This whole complex is called the city gate. So it's very different than our mind. And so if we think about this, why is the city gate built this way?
It's hard to shut in.
Right, because on a regular city gate, you think, oh, these wide open doors are coming in and out.
You see, people think you say, hey, box in, you can't really shut in.
Right. It's built like this for defensive purposes. Right? So if you have a whole bunch of people who have to stop and turn right, above them you have all these archers raining down arrows and killing anybody that wants to come in. As well as you have to enter through these passages, and this is where you find the leaders of the community. Right? The leaders, if you remember Proverbs, the leaders will be at the gate. Right? This is this little complex. You find commerce in here, you find business in here, you find leadership in here, judges make decisions. No, this person really don't like you, kick them out. Right? They're not in the city, they're in the city gate. They make just judgment decisions in here. So this is like, okay, so I got to reframe my mind when I think of the city gate because it changes the text just a little bit. Okay, now you can do that. Oh, wait, keep it in mind. So, I'm in Israel, and so this is one place. The next day, we went to another city. Wait, it's not here. Let me back up. I'm getting too far. So the city gate is here. Go back one, please. So the city's back here. You can't really see it back here. But if you walk through this place, you notice that the paths, the roads of the city, that kind of wind around the place. When you go to the city gate, you can see it's like linear. It's like shorter in one place, longer than other places. It's not mathematically, geometrically square, right? It's not the same. And you see the same in the roads. The roads would go up to like a big boulder, they would go around this boulder to another part of the town. Or there would be like an old structure where a house was, and the road would come to a dead end, and then it would kind of wind around to go behind this house. It was weird, like all of these paths, it was like spaghetti in this town. Nothing really was lined out correctly. The next day, we went to Sheen, right? This is a Greek town. This was created by the Romans about 200 years BC, 100 years BC. And if you notice, like everything is lined out straight. There's all these columns, there's these roads, there's mathematical like distances between this road and the next road that goes down this street. There's a latrine that has a system for piping that goes in 90-degree directions, and it's all laid out. It reminded me of Phoenix, Arizona. I don't know if anybody's ever been to Phoenix, Arizona. But Phoenix, Arizona is laid out in a grid. Perfect geometrical grid, right? All major streets are 1 mile apart. Every block is a quarter mile apart, so there's 3 streets, and then the 4th street is a mile. And everything is laid out in this perfect little grid. Because Phoenix is very Greek, right? It's this idea like everything has to line up mathematically. And if everything lines up mathematically, then we have the right answer. We solve all of the problems. And this is part of the difference between people in here, the people who wrote this book, very Eastern Hebraic, as opposed to the Greek mindset, where everything is figured out by math, and simple, and easy. And go ahead, you can turn those lights up. Perfect. Perfect. I'm getting there. Yes, it does. You think so, right? Because if everything adds up, then it makes everything easier. That's exactly right.
Let's go the right way.
Right.
More than I said, okay, big boulder, next.
Yeah, can you imagine giving directions? In Phoenix, you're like, you gotta go down 2 miles and then turn right at the light and then turn left at the second light, right? It's super easy. But yeah, in the Hebrew culture, it's like, yeah, you got to go around the boulder, but don't go past the second boulder because the third boulder gets you wrong. I mean, it's hard, right? So it doesn't make any sense.
I was ready my creation, like St. Petersburg is my kind of the fact that Philadelphia had to adapt the city to what was already there. Where they built Phoenix, for Phoenix, they built St. Petersburg. They didn't have 400-year-old buildings already there. They had worked around with old streets and stuff like that. So
I don't know about Philadelphia. All I know is that even in our culture, and a lot of the large cities, Chicago and other places, the mathematics determines the geography, right? As opposed to just building and building. And I mean, New Orleans is kind of like we built on and we have like weird streets, and so it kind of determines the river goes and determines. But even outside the river, we still have geometric status because the geography and our mindset makes it easier if we mathematically figure it out to build the streets into the geography as opposed to just allowing the geography to determine where we go. And there's ancient cultures, with Indian culture and all this other stuff that line up more so with the biblical culture. But going back to the depth point, I'm going to skip forward a little bit because I want to get to this. Our Greek upbringing, we want things to be clean and precise. Right? That's just because why? You said it. Because it seems like it's easier, right? It's easier. With every question, we have an answer. Right? And this is true from a biblical perspective, for a church perspective, I say. Every question has an answer. And why do we want an answer for every question? Because we want certainty. Right? As long as we can be certain about things, then we can have defined boxes for our definitions. We must have right and wrong. We must have black and white. We have to have absolute truths in this Greek perspective. In Hebrew thinking, Hebrew's messy. Hebrew is extremely messy. Language doesn't even have vowels, right? In Greek, this is what the text says. In Hebrew, well, can also say this. How do we like that? I mean, that frustrates us when we go through that. Greek is very precise. Hebrew is very messy. But isn't that like life? Isn't life messy? We plan things out. We say, this is how long we're going to go to school. This is how long we're going to take this job to finish this job in Alabama. It should be done by this point, right? All of these things, we figure out mathematically, all of these things should work out. But how does that really work out? Andrea, my sweet wife, who just left, I can tell her story. She's like, I want to help you. You know, you have all of these things that are going on, and you're working at the building and all this other stuff. And so I'm going to hire a landscaper to put some plants in, and he's going to pour this concrete slab for us so that you can build the structure back. I'm going to have him pour this concrete slab. Great. You know, I think that's great. Take that off. Well, the guy's never poured a slab before. Didn't tell us this. I come in to see the slab. I think Alex can pour a slab that isn't like this. Alright? And I'm like, I gotta talk to Bruce, somebody help me out. So I'm looking at him, I get home and I'm like, and you can put a marble on it. Whoosh. Yeah, like the Windelas, that's right. I'm like, what am I gonna do with this? And so my wife, who has this great plan, I wanna help you out, I'm gonna do this. Now I have like this even bigger problem that I come by fix this. But how many times is that right in life? It happens all the time. We have these great plans that we do this, it just doesn't work out that way. See, in Greek, we think everything, if we plan the work, or if we plan the work and work the plan, the whole plan will work out perfectly, right? That's not reality. That's this Greek mindset that we were born into, thinking that we can control these things, and in all reality, the Greek mindset is life doesn't work that way. Life's hard. It's messy. It doesn't work out exactly the way you want it to. Which led me to Thursday night, when we were at a dinner with Walt and a few other people, and Aaron invited us. And I was talking to somebody who came up to me, and he's like, yeah, I was in this Bible study, and they were having these questions about this and that. And I got to the point where I really don't like to ask questions about the Bible, because it makes me question my faith. So I don't ask questions. I thought, wow, then this would be a hard place for you to come to, right? Because that's all we do, is ask questions, because it's in the questions that we what? We find answers, or sometimes more questions. And we found that it's in the questions that we grow. It's like working out, right? You work out. Nate, you work out? Sometimes, right? Why do you work out? These kids work out. Why do you work out? To get big, to get strong, right? What happens when you stop working out? What? You shrink, right? Or you get fat, right? One of the two, right? Yeah. So we work out because our muscles have to keep being used. If we don't use our muscles, they atrophy, they shrink, they go away. And the old phrase is, use it or lose it. The same thing is with faith. Your job is to wrestle with this text. It's not to be easy. It's not so you have all the answers so that you can say, oh, I know all the truth, so I don't know. Because once you stop wrestling with this stuff, you start moving farther away from God. You stop being used by God. You stop growing in what it means to live a life fully alive in God. Because you're content. You do nothing. Thank you. So we have to wrestle with this. One of the examples that we wrestled with a long time ago, I'm going to bring it up today. Who knows the 10 commandments? Who can quote all 10 commandments? Anybody? These girls here. 10 commandments. Who can do it? Man, come on, spot, Mom. Man.
I'll agree with it.
What's the first one? No other gods. Or to know God, depends on which translation we look at, right? To know God. What's the second one? carved images, idols. Great. What's the third one? I didn't get it. They. All right. Now I'm going to this side. What's the fourth commandment? What? That's the fifth. What is the fourth one? Somebody already said it, so I gave you the easy way out. Right? On the Sabbath. Commanded you, right? Next slide. Exodus 20, verse 7. Exodus 20, who didn't read? Alex, you got me? Alex, 20. Exodus 20, verses 7 through 11. Remember the seventh day. Read it out loud for everyone.
Exodus 20, what?
7. 20, verse 7. Chapter 20, verse 7.
You shall not take the name of the Lord your God in vain, for the Lord will not hold him guiltless and take his name in vain.
That's the third one. Now, verse 8. I'm sorry.
Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy.
Through 11.
6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But on the seventh day is the Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, you or your son, or your daughter, or your male servant, or your female servant, or your livestock, or the sojourner who is within your gates. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, all that is in them, and rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and made it holy.
Great. Deuteronomy says this. What was the first word that you read? In there, 8? Remember. Verse 12 says this in Deuteronomy. Guard the Sabbath, to set it apart, as Jehovah, your Elohim, commanded you. 6 days you labor and shall do all your work. But the seventh day is the Sabbath of Jehovah, your Elohim. You do not do any work. You, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, female servants, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger within your gates, so that your male servant and your female servant rest as you do. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Egypt, and that Jehovah your Elohim brought you out of there with a strong hand. Your Elohim commanded you to perform the Sabbath day. So, question. What is the Sabbath? What's the Sabbath?
Set apart. Set apart. Because it's holy.
What is set apart?
That day.
Okay, a time. What is set apart? Okay, what else? It's a mindset. What kind of mindset?
The other 6 days is something different.
Okay, so it's a mindset that's different. What else?
Renewal.
It's renewal. Okay. Okay. What do we do on the Sabbath day?
Your work.
Something different.
It is holy. What is holy? Do you remember? Deborah said the idea of holy is something that is set apart for a specific purpose. Is the definition of holy. But it's not common. So there's something that's not common about this time, right? It is something that God has said is holy, is set apart from everything else. And what are you to do on this time that is set apart from everything else? What are you to do?
Remember.
Remember what?
We should remember this. We're a part of that. We were slaves.
Or you just said it a few minutes ago. 8 years ago, you were a slave to what? So every Sabbath, every time this time comes around, it should be your opportunity to remember where you came from. and to guard that time. It says not just to remember, but to guard it, like to protect it. Like, imagine guarding your children who are running out on the street and there's cars coming. What would you do? Run after them, right? Why? But why would you run after them? To protect them. Why? Because you love them. There's this idea that we are to remember God has created this time and space for who? For us. Why do we need it? Why do we need it?
One of the reasons we need it is because, or one of the reasons I need it, is because if not, I think people tangled up in this world, we call it crap, and the day-to-day work, the pressures and everything else. This is a time for me to embrace them and to reflect and to settle my mind. I started again, he started with that. Keep it close to God. He's one that we have in
So that's my time to build on our relationship. Why we concentrate. I feel like I work on my relationship daily with him. I feel like my Sabbath day is my day of actually listening to all.
And why do we need that?
To work on it.
Why can't you just do that every day? What? Because life is messy. We have work to do, right? We have bills to pay. We have these things that have to get done. We have life that has to take precedent. You got basketball you got to do, right? You got to get better. You got to work out. You got to work on your drums. And there's things that you have to do. But we need a day where we can woosah, right? Come. Go ahead.
I don't feel like it's a gas thing. Like I'll fill up on Monday by Friday or Saturday.
You're out.
One of the things that sometimes we think is that there's something we were week is not okay, but it's actually required.
Yes.
6 days of work, so it's not saying that we're evil because we get tired of our work stuff throughout the week. As long as we stop and
Right.
I think it's a great idea too, because what constitutes work?
Well, that was my next question. What is work? That is very good. But this is the point.
Is it just something that's different from common? Like me, yeah, it is work to go out and work in my garden and to plant and to do all those things. But it's very providing. It's very fulfilling. It's not this much.
More work to do.
But I enjoy that, So it is a fine line to think of.
And that's the point, right? From a Greek perspective, we say it's this, and this, right? Everybody has to fall within this box, right? No rest, no this, no that, right? And we that's the Greek mind wanting to take over and say this is what Sabbath is. But the Sabbath rest is different for Bruce than it is for you.
Right, but even the rabbis talk about this, and it's an age-old conversation, what constitutes work, even you're going to be part of preparation is work. And so even something as simple as, you better not tear your toilet paper apart on Sabbath. So even they had very strict, and have some.
My question in here, though, is what is it for you? Hang on, let me just finish that thought. The reason that I say that is because the rabbis have been wrestling it for 8,000 of years. Do we, in this room, wrestle with it? Or is it just, well, that was their argument? Do we, every year, every Sabbath, think, can I wrestle more? Or in preparation for that, do we plan stuff out on a Saturday? I do all these things, I gotta mow the lawn because I got a party coming up on Sunday. Or do we think, oh wait, I shouldn't do that. I'm intentionally
Then when you go to Isaiah, Isaiah says, as long as you're not doing it for your own promotion, your own benefit, then it's okay. So, and that goes across the board. And Petrol said, you can't do charity on the Sabbath because it makes you sad as sin to be sad on the Sabbath. Where Isaiah is saying, charity is fine, if you're not benefiting from it. So that's what you should do. So it's all over the board.
And that's the point. Let's not get too deep here. The point is, they wrestled with it. Or we wrestled with it. Are you thinking about it? Abraham Heschel says that what are the kinds of labor not to be done on the Sabbath? And he points to the rabbis and say they talk about anything that took place in building a sanctuary. Right? Any type of tools that you would use to create a sanctuary. And he says this. He says the Sabbath itself is a sanctuary which we build. A sanctuary in time. A sanctuary. What is a sanctuary used for? You enter into, and you do what in a sanctuary? What? Think of spiritual sanctuary. Worship. This time and space is a sanctuary in time that you have an opportunity to spend with God, to spend with your family, to spend in laughter, and joy. And all of the mess, the anger, the frustration, the anxiety, the stress, and all that stuff that we go through 6 days a week, we leave that and enter the sanctuary for protection, for rest, to be with God and our family and our friends and the loved ones that bring us joy. It's in the Sabbath that we find rest. It's in the Sabbath where I think God has to mean, come to me, and I will give you rest. Because we need to escape. When our energy is gone, when the frustration and the anxiety and the stress is too high, God says, this is my time. All that stuff that you go through in your time, you can go back tomorrow. Come into my time. Yeah. This is different. Set apart. So, in a world that's full of messiness, I'm excited that we come together Saturday morning to remember what the rest of this day is for. To celebrate with our friends, our family, our loved ones, and the one who loves us. To forget everything that we went through. Find peace in this place. Father, I thank you for this opportunity to celebrate. To celebrate rest. And how hard that is to sometimes even say. In a world that seems to keep you busier and busier and busier. Thank you for the reminder that we are to wrestle with this holiness.